Okay. Make sure it does. Great. So it's working there. Okay. So first and foremost, does anybody, and I mean, we always like to start out with, uh, uh, are you guys seeing my desktop?
Yes.
Oh, hang
Yes.
on. I got to get Keynote. There we go. There we go. So I've done that. Okay, so before we launch into
We didn't,
Sonoma,
Ken, I'm sorry, we didn't get the your recording message, or at least I didn't.
nothing came
Oh,
up
it's
and
up in the
said,
upper right now.
oh yeah, they moved it.
Oh, thank you very much. I didn't see
Thanks,
that.
Bob.
I'm sorry.
No, no problem. Thanks for bringing it up.
One of the latest revisions. It
Yeah,
Do we still have to click on it?
you have
just
to say
click
got
OK.
it. I think you say okay or got it or something.
It's
Yeah, it's a
okay.
blue box. Okay.
Mm.
All right. So before we dig into Sonoma, I always like to open it up to question and answers about anything Apple, anything Mac, anything in general. So feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand. And there's Randy. So go right ahead, Randy.
Sure. Hey, I'm excited about the iPhone with the either kickstand or standby or whatever, where you turn it on its side and widgets come up, and when it gets dark, the text turns to red, so it doesn't disturb your sleep. You got to be on the charging or plugged in for Sidekick or standby, whatever it's called, to work. But my question would be, how do you keep it on active all the time? It seems like it'll go on, then time out, but then I either touch the screen or hit the sidebar, and then it finally seems to kick in, stay on all night.
Sure.
Any answers to that?
So let me probably the easiest way to do this is we'll do iPhone 17 standby. I'm just going to do images so we don't run into any copyright type infringements here. So let's open that one, open this one. So in iOS 17, and I'm not sure which. Oh, and unfortunately, I don't think Al's with us, is he? So unfortunately, Al is so great at getting links and PDFs and all that, but he and his wife are down with COVID. And so, hopefully this isn't a trend that continues with all of us. But anyway, so standby mode is the situation where, I don't know if you're aware, but if you have an Apple Watch, there was always called nightstand. And what that ability was to put your watch on a charger, and then it would display, once it's on a charger and it quote goes to sleep, it would display the time and your charge level. And I'm going to get back off that page anyway. But now what they've done with the iPhone, starting in 17, if you have a stand, now the phone needs to be upright or a horizontal face. So in other words, in the case here, you can see that it's all where the phone is in portrait mode. But you can also do it in, I'm sorry, that's landscape mode, but you can do it in portrait mode too. And portrait mode, yeah. So it treats it a little differently. So let's talk about the normal way that's in standby mode. So you have either a magnetic charging stand that's MagSafe, and when you put the phone on it, and would essentially quote go to sleep, it will come up with like here where it says 941, and there's a bit of a trivia to that, by the way. The 941 shows on display here in big numbers once it goes to sleep. Now, you can again do this on a magnetic charger, or you can just have a stand there, and then you would have it plugged into a charging cable, or you can do it on a non-magnetic charger that's an easel type one. So in other words, anything that'll allow your phone to be in landscape mode and being charged, it will go into standby mode. Once you're in standby mode, you can see there are different faces that you can use. One where it shows the time in the calendar. I particularly like the one that's just the large numbers like that, but then they have another screen, and you can flip between these screens and figure out what you want. But this has the date and the temperature and stuff like that. So, but really at night, it's really nice to be able to look up and see this. There's a daytime mode, and excuse me, there's a dark mode and a lit mode. So in other words, if you're in a room and it's nighttime and you put it up on it, but the light is still on in the room, it will display a screen in a little brighter bit. When I shut my lights off, I have mine set where that big number becomes a kind of faint red number showing the time. And that's very useful because at night, and of course you can always say to any of your devices, you can say the word hey and the word Siri and ask what time it is, but it's just so much easier to look up at this. Now, what happens is though, after time and after a little while, it will fade away and go dark. So you're not seeing it. But there's two ways that I know of to get it to show back up. One, Randy, you can try waving your hand in front of the phone, because there's ultrasonic and infrared sensors in the phone that they use for Face ID and everything out, and it would sense that movement. And that's again only if it does the complete dark mode. The other thing you can do is, if you have your phone set on an end table, for instance, you can tap the table, and just that slight amount of movement will invigorate the accelerometer and brighten it back up to the lesser amount.
And Ken, this is Randy again. I just put a link in for everybody.
I just saw that. Yeah,
and I
that's great.
discovered exactly what you're saying, but now I was able to find under display 3 settings: automatically, after 20 seconds, or never. So I just clicked on never. So I think with your help, I answered my own question. So
well, but no, your question was great, and for the group, because this is such a new thing, and it's a great feature. So no, it was perfect, almost like we'd planned it. But the thing is, it's in a first of all, it's plugged into the charger already, but it's also a very low energy state. So there's no real negatives to having it all the time. And I didn't know about that setting. I just kind of know about the ways to defeat that setting. So, and then once you're in there, and Randy's link will probably have it, it's great to show there are kind of 3 different displays you can swipe through, and it's just wonderful. So the other thing that most people aren't aware of, though, is if you put it on the stand and it's in portrait mode or vertical, you don't get the same thing. The phone just kind of operates like it normally does. You can tap it and do the screen and things like this. So in other words, you really have two choices. And I've gotten a MacNexus stand I really like now that I have my, and in fact, you know what, why don't I bring it up? Let's see here. And what I'll do is I'll put that, and at the very end too, we'll remember to save the chat because we'll try get it like Al always does with the links. Let's go in here, go to orders, MagSafe. So obviously if things are MagSafe, it will work. So it isn't. So let's go stand. I think it might be called a 3-in-1. Yeah, so here we go. And which one is the one I'm liking now? Yeah, this one. So I'll get a link. And I'll put it in the so the way this stand works is you can see that the magnet is kind of right in the middle. You see here it is folded flat, right? So that's the magnet right in the middle. So there's no shelf needed on this because the magnet's very strong. So if I put it horizontally, you'll see that it does standby mode. But if I do it vertically, as the picture on the right here, I'm able to just see it regularly. And this thing folds up. Oh, and I didn't see this little lay down one, but the beauty is too, you'll notice there's an Apple Watch charger on the top, which also does nightstand, like I said. And nightstand, I used to have it tilted like this, but you just don't need it anymore because of the new standby mode in the watch. And then in the very back of this device is an AirPod charger. So you can wirelessly charge your AirPods. So it does all three, and it's quite good, and I really like it. And what is it, $30? And there's even a $5 off coupon, so about $35. And I
So
did
do you
put that.
take your case off at night?
Oh, good question. So I have a MagSafe case from Spigen, and it works on this. If you have a real thick case, it may or may not work on this, but it's a damn strong magnet, and it works through my case. So much so that it's kind of tough to pull it off sometimes. You got to kind of leverage it. So anyway, this also really displays how the whole thing works, and it's really pretty nice. I had another one that I bought, which was this one, and I was really encouraged about this for travel, but this one, it's not as friendly through the case and things like that. And for me, I have to always have my case on. I mean, I'm not going to take my case off and on every day. So I don't think this one's as good. And the link that I gave you was this one. So, and again, everything charges right there. I've got, other than my iPad, everything happens with this. So, great question, Randy. Any other questions on the on standby mode and how it might benefit you? Okay.
Ken, one other note. I know this was brought up, and there was not a digital clock at the previous meeting, but now you can add widgets, and you just tap on either the left side or the right side, and you can add clock, and now you have access to a digital clock instead
No,
of actually the.
you've been able to have digital clocks since this began.
Okay, I just
Yeah,
found
we flipped through it. I think we flipped through it when we discussed this a meeting or two ago, and it's there. But widgets are great, and widgets are in iOS 17 and actually now in Sonoma. And widgets are just little apps that run. So, but I don't know that you need to go through that. But there's and this may expand what your options are in this. I haven't dove in. I've kept it fairly stock so that I can talk about what it is that I use, and that's about it. So, but fantastic. So, anybody else, any questions on that or any other questions? Okay. Oh, Randy again, go for it.
sorry.
No, don't apologize, man. Your questions are
No,
great.
a different
And
thing
we need we need to fill.
that's kind of the reason. Yeah, but a serious question, and it seems to just have impacted me recently within the last month or so. And it's on the big Sonoma. I'm on Sonoma 14.1.2, and it's the studio and the studio monitor. But I've noticed some latency delay in both the trackpad and the wireless mouse, wireless trackpad, wireless mouse. It seems to, on both of those, I have next to a wireless keyboard, they both seem to time out or just not able to function. And it takes just like a tap or two or more movement in the mouse to get them to reconnect. And it's just recently, it's never had that before.
Well, let me ask you this. So you're running the studio, right?
Yes.
And did you get a newer keyboard with it?
Yes,
Or
with the
are you
fingerprint
using,
ID.
so you do have a newer keyboard?
Yes, and the trackpad and the smart mouse is just the wireless mouse that I have, but they
Sure.
seem to just have a little delay once in a while, and I don't know how or what prompts the
Well,
delay.
and I think Kathy Dodson is on here too, and we just had this discussion yesterday. Um, and she's doing it on a MacBook Air, I believe, and it seems to be after a certain amount of time, but between starts that it doesn't. So, but she was using an older keyboard. So when she gets back from her trip, we're talking about that she should try one of the newer ones to see if that changes it. I mean, luckily she's on a laptop, so she has that. And when it slows down, I'm encouraging her to just try then just the regular built-in keyboard on the Mac. I have read a little about this, but not much. Have you done any Googling on it, Randy?
No, not really. I always wait for the first Saturday meetings.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I can't say that I haven't heard of it because I have. I hadn't heard of it much, but now there's two people with anecdotal evidence on it. So, yeah, the funny thing is that they do have the ability to pass down firmware upgrades to peripheral devices too. So that might be something uh, uh, that would come down the way. And is it the trackpad and the mouse? Are you trackpad or you mouse?
Well, let me hold it up in my little window. Here, I just have a wireless trackpad I'm holding up in my little square.
The Apple one.
Yes.
Okay. And is that got the delay or is it the keyboard that's
It
got
does
the
once in
delay
a
or
while.
both?
It seems like it disconnects, and also the little battery mouse, Apple.
Oh, so you have a mouse, a keyboard, and a trackpad.
Correct.
And does it affect all three?
Not so much the keyboard, very rarely, only when I start up, which is a normal expectation. I try to with sometimes when I have to code in and type in my little password to get onto the computer, but that's normal. That's not so no, not so much on the keyboard, but the two other peripherals, the trackpad and the Apple mouse once in a while. But that's okay. We'll kind of wait for that. I think
Well, I
now,
just one last question.
yeah,
Is it the rechargeable Apple mouse?
yes, on both of them. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. And keep us posted and, whatever you find out to forward that information because that's weird.
Will do, but we have like four or five, Mary, Ellie, Bob, Rich,
Yeah,
and Carolyn, I
perfect.
believe. So I get to stop asking questions.
No problem, Randy. Thank you. This is going to be a casual day, you guys. Mary, go right ahead.
Why don't you take, I've got two things to talk about. When you text, can you hit the I haven't been able to hit the paragraph without sending the message. And that's one. And the second thing is my iPad takes forever to load load any website. And I don't know what that's about. That's kind of new.
Sure. So the first one is when you say paragraph, are you typing or hitting paragraph? I didn't follow that.
Okay, when I'm typing a text message on my iPad
Right.
and I want to hit the paragraph, but I don't want to hit send,
Option.
if I hit the return, it sends, right?
Option
That's what it's
return.
supposed to do. Where do you hit paragraph? I don't
You
get.
don't. That's what I'm asking. Is there a way to hit paragraph? I want to.
Yeah, okay. So
Sorry, I wasn't clear on that.
no, I just wanted to make sure you didn't have something that I did, I'm jealous.
No,
So
sir.
the way that I accomplish that, and there's two ways. I will put it in dictation mode. I will put the microphone on,
Yeah.
and I will say either new paragraph or new line. So new line gives you like one carriage return, where new paragraph gives you
Oh,
a second. But and that works these days because a new thing that I'm going to talk about slightly in Sonoma in iOS 17, if you're using dictation, it stays on now, and you can go back and forth between typing and talking, and it works pretty seamlessly. So the other thing on text messages, yeah,
Well, there is a way, Ken.
oh, go ahead, Bob.
Hold down the option key and hit return. You get a new paragraph
Well,
when you're texting.
where's the option key on the
she's on an
iPad?
iPad, Bob.
Doesn't have an option key.
Well, I do it all the time on my regular on Mac. Let's see.
Now, if you have an add-on keyboard on your iPad, you may have option.
Right.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but thanks, because that if I'm sitting at the computer doing it,
Yeah,
that works.
Yeah. And so I
more
think Mary,
research
a lot of it, I'm sorry,
required.
go ahead, Bob. Bob, what?
More research needed.
Yeah.
I
So I
thought
think the thing is that, it's all about it's the content, not how it looks. And sometimes it's just,
yeah.
better to do that. But that's what I do. And in fact, like if you're posting on Facebook, a lot of times it wants enter to be this and do that. So in fact, it I just default to the using the voice command. In fact, the same thing happens on the Mac, unless you do the option like Bob said, or and I'll do again, I'll just voice it. So,
Mhm.
all righty. Ellie, go right ahead.
Yeah, when I upgraded to Sonoma here in December, I lost the wonderful feature that automatically fills in the codes that you get with two-factor authentication. And I have gone in and
On all of your devices?
yes, I use it mostly on my laptop, and I won't ever do this again. I'd upgraded my iOS to 17 the day before I upgraded to Sonoma, so I really can't tell which one has affected that that ability. So I'd like to get that restored.
Yeah, what they've done is they have enhanced it, but at some point that must have turned it off for you.
Yeah.
So you're going to go into your settings and again with I apologize, my brain is just not on top of it. Al or Bob may be having a pop up for this or something, but what's happened is rather than just getting your text messages of your two-factor authentication to fill in, it's now also doing it when you get an email, and that may have turned it off. And I'll let somebody do some research there and tell us and pop up and, just speak out and say where in settings it is on those. And I think you just need to turn it back on. So,
Well, I've gone through, I've tried to research, and boy, I can't find a thing.
yeah, it's a new thing. Anybody, Bob, did you have any input on that?
This is on our Mac.
Oh yeah, MacBook, well, it's on a MacBook Pro, and so like I sign into my bank there. Yeah,
In a particular program like email.
it's yeah, it would be in my email program. Typically, I'd be
Okay.
signing on to my
I'll
bank account, and
see if I
and
can find some.
okay.
Yeah, actually, let me do this. We'll just pull up Safari here and let's see. Two-factor iOS 17 settings. Autofill. Because what they did is they also had a change where here we go, automatically fill. So it will now delete those old messages once you've used them if you want to.
Yeah.
So here we go. So let's go through this. Automatically fill in verification code, set it up. No, we don't need that.
Passwords. I see this. Go to settings, passwords.
Yeah, and then enter setup key. Yeah, that's not it. Here we go. So go to settings, tap passwords.
Okay.
And then there's some options there. One is to clean up automatically. Let me go ahead and go there.
Well, it's not cleaning it up. It's actually entering it into the,
No, with the cleanup means what happens is, let's say you would have gotten a two-factor text message.
Right.
Normally that would just stay in your messages.
I understand that. When I get
And so what it's doing, well, I know, but I'm trying to explain how this works. Now what it says is you have the option of saying, go ahead and delete that after you've used it, so you don't build those up. Now, yours is going a little bit beyond that. So hang on here.
Well, at the top of that screen, it says autofill passwords and passkeys. On the screen where password options.
That needs to be turned on.
Yeah, that's what it sounds
Yeah,
like.
right here.
All right.
So password options. So go into passwords.
Okay.
You'll have to give it your information. Are you with me on your Mac?
I'm not with you on my Mac. I'm with you on my iPhone, and it has
Okay,
that.
it actually should be the same thing. The nice thing is
Right.
there's unity amongst this.
Right. And so I have
I'm going to go to it on my phone at the same
Okay.
time. So,
yeah, I
Cool.
have it turned on, autofill passwords. I
Okay.
have used passwords and passkeys from iCloud passwords and keychain, then also from 1Password. And so I have it turned on for both my key.
Do you use 1Password?
I do. And maybe that's the issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but here's my recommendation whenever things
Okay.
like this get weird. First of all, yeah, turn that off because you can always turn it back on. But the button that says autofill passwords or passkeys, even though it's on, turn it off and then turn
Okay.
it back on. And
Okay.
then the bottom part is the option for this clean up automatically thing,
Right.
which is really, that shouldn't be a negative at all, but it's just a housekeeping thing.
Yeah.
And it is is it clicked on where it says iCloud keychain?
It is it now this might be the issue. Okay. Use oh golly, here we are.
Yeah, you don't have
Use
your keychain
passwords
on.
and passwords from both keychain and 1Password, and then it says set up verificate lower on the screen on the option on the settings screen here with password options, clean up automatically. I've got that turned on. Set up verification codes using, and then it gives me the option of either iCloud passwords and keychain or 1Password. I can't get both of them set up. It
Well,
checks one or it checks the other, so I guess
I'm a strong believer and recommender uh of using just iCloud keychain.
yeah, I know you are, and and so I may have to just go to that. I try to duplicate it all just so I have, this kind of thing, but let me try that and see if it works. But yeah, the magic word I always have a trouble finding in the searching for help on the web. The word here is autofill, one word, which I hadn't
Yeah.
searched for. So that's
Yeah, and autofill is not always just passwords, it can be credit cards also.
exactly. So anyway, that helps
Or
me.
also addresses, like if you're filling out a form.
Yeah, I've been a little hesitant to have autofill on a lot of things, but
Oh, why? Why would you be hesitant?
well, mostly credit card numbers and fill them in on like Amazon or something.
Okay.
That's
So, but what's your trepidation with that? And I'm glad you
just
asked, I'm
security.
glad you mentioned it because I
Yeah.
think people need to hear this.
Just
So,
security, that's all. I just
okay,
so
the worst security in the world is having a place store your credit card.
uh-huh.
Okay. Uh, the best security is to have your Apple device fill in your credit card for you.
Okay. I know.
Because
Yeah, go ahead.
because uh that's the Target hack, the Home Depot hack,
Uh-huh.
all of those were repositories of the credit cards that they saved. But it's a hassle to fill in your credit card all the time. So you're just like your passwords and now your pass keys and your credit cards, they're stored in this very secure enclave inside your Apple device that is impenetrable. In fact, that chip could be removed and put in a different device and it will not work. So
Mhm.
all it's doing is typing in your credit card information for you. And the only place that exists is in your secure enclave on your computer. And so it's the safest, best way possible. And I can take it to an extreme. Years ago, so PCs are vulnerable, PCs and Androids are vulnerable to what's called, oh gosh, come on, Ken. Uh, Basically recording every keystroke you make,
Yeah.
every letter you type. So the secure recommendation was to have a note or a message somewhere hidden where you would copy and paste your password instead of typing your password, because all the keyloggers, I'm sorry, that's what it was. It's called a keylogger program, or is. You would hit, Command V for paste, and therefore the keylogger is just sending that information. So that
Mhm.
masks the actual password. So inherently, it's safer than typing it and everything else. And it's just there are things you should worry about, and there's things that you're worried because you think they might be more convenient, but in fact they're more convenient and they're safer. In fact, that's why Apple Pay is more secure than using your credit card. So does that make sense? I hope I
It makes perfect sense, and I have never entered my credit, let any Amazon or anybody hang on to my credit card. I always type it in manually. I've memorized it.
Yeah,
But I like your
that again is
Uh-huh.
vulnerable because you're
Okay.
transmitting that.
You convinced
Now, the new thing is with passkeys, what's changing with all this is instead of having to enter your credit card, it would go and say with a site, they say, well, no, this is her trusted device. She's used her Face ID or fingerprint to get in there. So we know it's what it is and it's secure. So
Okay, thank you.
it's a changing world and you should be rightly so, but I think that it's and I hope everybody, I mean, these are great questions and I really think this is helpful for everybody. So, all right,
Yeah,
Bob White.
I have a lighter duty question. If you look at the participants, some people have a graphic like Randy's shows his face. Dennis Irwin has a little Dennis the Menace and his icon. Most of us just have a letter. So my question is, I have looked several times and nothing is obvious. How do I get that to be a graphic instead of, in my case, a B?
Well, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask two things. Randy, do you have a Zoom account?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Dennis Irwin, do you have a Zoom account?
Yes, I do. I do.
Jane Hunter, you have a Zoom account. All right. So that's what I suspected it is. So because I'm signed into the MacNexus and I've just changed my name to Ken Spencer. But since I didn't, so in my Zoom account, I have a profile picture. If I was signed into the Ken Spencer account, it would show up like that. So
Okay, gotcha.
that's where that's coming from. And you may even have an account, but you may not be signed into your account.
I don't think I do, but
And when I say
Thank
sign
you.
in, to me, I found the best way to do that is you go to zoom.us in the browser and sign in. Like I do that before this meeting today, so that I was sure I was in the MacNexus Zoom account, because that way when it goes through to do the recording and everything. So now that and it looks very suspicious because it looks very like when we have the ones for text and everything else, and those are all generated by Apple, but these don't cross-pollinate.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Rich, go right ahead.
Yeah. Back to your airplane ride, Ken. What's the trick of taking a picture out the airplane window and not getting glare? You mentioned a filter or something.
Yeah, let me pull that up. And I have to say that I flew to and from Japan in business class seats for just over $2,000, which is a third of what you would normally pay. I used Zip Air. Now, Zip Air is Zip Air is part of Japan Airlines, and you don't want to call them a low-cost carrier. They're just a no-frills carrier. In other words, I paid $38 to have a checked bag each way, or maybe it was both ways. I can't remember. Hang on. Yeah. Gosh, searching for iPhone in my thing is hopeless. So I'll keep looking and talking at the same time here. Actually, I'll show that. And what Zip Air is and you can fly for under it's like $600 or $700 out of they fly out of LAX, they fly out of San Jose, and they fly out of San Francisco. They only fly out of San Jose 5 days a week, and basically the plane that goes over is the plane that comes back. But they're fairly new or very new airplanes. They're Recaro seats. So in the business class, it's lay flat. And frankly, for me on those long trips, I love the lay flat seats because it's just, it's the only way. Otherwise, you waste a day on each end. But nothing else is included. I paid $10 to have my in-flight meal. It was quite tasty and quite good. And I generally, if I fly business class, I don't really utilize the all the other, I don't care about the nice foods. I'll maybe have one glass of champagne and that's it. So the drinking doesn't do it. I love the situation where I pay for the frills I want. If I wanted a blanket on the plane, you pay for it in advance. I think it was $10 with a pillow and all that other stuff. And it was so nice. I said, I get to keep this? Yeah. So I just keep this blanket, fly with it when you come back, things like that. But it's called Zip Air. And I'm looking, I gotta find this here. iPhone.
Is it a filter?
No.
I think you called it a bellows.
Yeah, it's a bellows, but I know that's not part of its name. It's descriptive, but not. Oh, great. Here it is. So,
Oh,
there, last purchase, January. Yeah. So the way this works is it fits on the phone. So this expands across, and then how far up and down the phone you use it is depending on where it is. And you can see in this picture now that now I have this bellows type thing where I put it against the glass and I can articulate the camera to some degree. There are some, if you're at the ultra wide angle lens, you're going to get a little bit of vignetting around the sides, but it's just a wonderful device. You clip it on wherever I am, whether I'm going to be in a bus, a hotel room, or a airplane. I make sure I have this in my pocket with me, and I put it on when I need it, and it has been great. The only downside is many of these, especially airplanes, they don't have just double lens glass or two panel glass. There's a between them, there's some space. So you can get some sun reflection coming through that. But for the most part, this is great because how many times you've been in a hotel room on the 10th floor and you have a wonderful view outside. Well, you can always take a black vest over your head and make yourself if you think about the old photographers where they used to pull the big cape over themselves, and that's what you're trying to do. That was so that the light from behind didn't get into the photo. But I'll put this link in there also.
Only $20. Wow.
Yeah. And then the bellows collapses, and then it does come off of the thing because it's just kind of pressed on there. And it's
Yeah, can you put that link in the
I'm putting it in right now.
chat? Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
it's a link. And then I'm going to show you the other one is, since we were talking a little bit about iPhone. This is my absolute favorite. I've shown this before. It's essentially, so in this case, it's a stand that allows you to just have your tripod be on it. I'm sorry, your iPhone be in a tripod on a table. But it also has other features where it mounts on the bottom. It's got a 1/4-20. So first of all, it's what's called an Arca mount, which means it will fit the wedge mount that you see on most tripods. But secondly, there's a threaded hole in the bottom where you could mount it to a tripod. And I do that quite often. There's a good example right there. And it's all aluminum. This little bracket, this little leg that sticks out actually is magnetic. It comes off and you hide it. It tucks right back in here. So, and it adjusts any width phone. Just fantastic. So that is, yeah, 5% off. But this is definitely the name brand of it. So I'll put that in too. And neither of these, they're independent of one another. You don't need one for the other, etc. So just bringing up the idea of this is, if you have a newer iPhone, and I'm not sure if it's just the pros or not, but there's a thing called night mode, whatever. So if it's very dark, there is the camera will take up to 3 or up to 10 seconds long exposure. And what that does is, if you're hand holding, you can't hold the phone still for a second. So there's a little movement. Well, the phone is so smart that it senses that movement with the accelerometer and essentially is making it so that you can do this long exposure. I have a picture I took in the Sahara Desert of the Milky Way, and I did it with the iPhone. So here's the trick. If it's handheld, your phone will only shoot up to, say, 3 to 5 seconds. But the phone is sensing if there's any movement. So if you set the phone on a tripod and there's no movement, that dark mode, well, I forget what it's called, night sense, I'm sorry, I'm just not all the way with it, can go up to 30 seconds. And my Milky Way shot was, in fact, a 30-second exposure, which, to be honest, created too much light. So I use another app called Halide now that I can adjust that length of it. But what happens is, if I set the iPhone, well, in this case, if you just had a table you were sitting at and you wanted to shoot the stars, and you got to be in a dark area because it's going to bring so much light in, you set the phone facing up. If you have the Apple Watch, you go to the Apple Watch and you do the camera remote, and you use the remote to actuate the camera, and you would get that 30-second exposure. Otherwise, if you mount it on a tripod like this, like that's what I had, I just set this tripod on this table that was on top of this hotel, and I had it pointing the right way. And I still, because you can do a delay, but I just ended up using the Apple Watch to actuate it. But if you have that long exposure, you could set it to wait 3 seconds after you tap it to do it. And then that exposure can be up to 30 seconds. And it's amazing the amount of light you can gather. So anyway, that's this.
Halide has a side product called Spectre, SPECTRE, which specializes in the long settings. So you can go way beyond the 30 seconds.
And that's Halide?
It's by Halide, yeah.
Okay,
It's
great.
Another one of their products.
And I think there's another one called, and I haven't used it much. I think it's called Slow Shutter.
Yes.
Yeah, Slow Shutter is another one.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all great. And those are, I mean, the apps, but the big part of this is it's no good if you're hand holding. And even if you're just bracing it against something, because you don't realize how much movement there is when you're doing stuff. So anyway, those are the great things on that. So I hope this isn't boring everybody, because these I think are all very, very good. Barbara, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was coming back to when you were talking about the autofill stuff. I have subscriptions to like, some newspapers and magazines and stuff. And I sort of wondered when they show now, sign in with your Apple ID, Google ID, Gmail ID, I guess it is. Is that a smart thing to do? Because you're typing in your Apple ID password. And I sometimes have to do it on a PC because some of the subscriptions are pretty old. And I think you said that on a PC, they are capturing your stroke, so it's not a good idea to type.
No. Nefarious people could be, but it's not it's a possibility. It's just not
Right.
a common thing.
So just
as far
having to type in my Apple ID on a PC device for the old subscriptions that I have. And I don't particularly want to clutter up my new iMac, my new MacBook Pro with all these old subscriptions because I may not keep them that long. So I'm just wondering whether it was smart to fill in my Apple ID or just fill in my password for the different
I
publications.
generally do, it'll usually have email as an option too, and that means that you've set up a password. I would just use your existing login credentials. The
Okay,
Apple ID. So the idea with, and it varies because, and I've done if you go back and look at the video on passwords, passcodes are the new thing. And what that is if it's set up to it, for instance, in Amazon, a Google or somebody like that. Actually, maybe we can equate it more to how Apple Pay works. So Apple Pay stores your credit card information. And it really only has visible the last 4 digits because you need that for certain verifications. But Apple Pay sets up, it doesn't use your regular credit card number, the one that's on the face of the card, which is your most vulnerable thing, is when you slide the card, that's the most vulnerable way because it's that or the number is your actual number, and that's what gets transmitted. When you do the chip on the card or you do Apple Pay, it creates a one-time use number and communicates that information. And in the case of Apple Pay, it will send that information as your quote credit card number, and it clears the transaction. And actually with Apple Pay, it will not give them any of your other information. Doesn't need, your name, your phone number, any of that stuff, because it's verified. Your credit card had already been verified, so it's much securer. And the thing is let's say that one-time use number gets used or gets hacked. Well, so what? It's already been used. It's of no value to anybody. So, and that's telling you how it goes that way, only to kind of tell you how it would go with passwords. So there's a new thing called pass keys, and it's subtly, it's been going on for 2-3 years. All the tech companies are participating in it because they want to have a central repository for all this. And the way it works is, actually, when you in the old days, we only could use a 4 or 6 digit passcode to get into our phones, right? There was no fingerprint or no Face ID, and that's how you unlocked your phone. Well, now you can unlock your phone with your biometrics, which would be your Face ID or your fingerprint. And of course, you still have your passcode as a backup. So your phone is become a trusted device, because to use your phone, it's very difficult for someone else to use your device. So rather than entering a whole bunch of passwords and passcodes, pass keys is saying, if you're at Google, you're at Microsoft, you're at Amazon, rather than asking for a password, because we know how that just gets, you have to make new ones, you do all this other stuff. I mean, it's difficult. It says when Amazon connects one time, they'll say, well, go ahead and let's make sure it's the owner of this phone. And once they do that, the phone becomes what's called the trusted device. And that means that the device itself becomes the password. Now, you still have the option to do the old password way, but passkeys are fantastic because if your phone gets lost or stolen, all of those things get shut down, and it's very safe, very secure, and you're not having to constantly wrangle with problematic passwords. So that being said, the screen that you talked about that comes up, do you want to log in with Facebook? Do you want to log in with Google? Do you want to do those? I don't I don't I don't let them do that. I'll do my email on that, but otherwise I will let them use my device as a pass key. So instead of passwords, you can keep an eye out for pass keys. And I think it's really gonna it's revolutionizing the security because it's super secure. But secondly, you can't imagine. I mean, you all know how many times we've had to deal with customer service to redo a password or things like that. The amount of time that they go through doing that. And then, of course, you have to factor and all this other stuff. So anyway, that's where it's going. On the PCs, I would be a little leery of it, but I'm not going to really tell you what to do on that. So passkeys are a thing. Looks like Bob White put a great thing here.
No, I'm typing a message saying to ignore that. I did find the right answer though. And the right answer is on the iOS keyboard, you hit shift and return at the same time.
Okay.
So hold down shift and tap return.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And I tried it and it does space.
Good,
give you a
thank
new
you.
paragraph.
And before you leave the passcodes it felt a little like that you were interchanging passcodes, pass keys, and passwords a little bit. So I want to make sure that it's clear. Pass keys mean that it's the trusted device. Is that right?
Correct. Passkey means that the phone has established a path to the website that you're trying to get into.
Okay. I think you
And
kind of
that's
interchanged.
been established
Okay.
more like when you first set up a password for that site. So now that pathway is established, anytime the phone wants to connect with that website, it doesn't ask for a password because it says, oh, that's Mary's phone, for instance, and it's a trusted device because we know that she had to use her own biometrics to get in. So the device itself is the trust factor, where a password was also a trust factor. But if you think about it, it's safer, faster, and more robust. Now, the differentiation between passwords and passcodes, generally speaking, like iOS devices and stuff, passcode indicates it's numeric, it's integers, it's 4 or 6 digits, but they're usually they're numerical. Whereas a password indicates it can be numbers, letters, special characters, or a combination of all of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it just felt like you may have misspoken once or twice on which one you meant. But one other related thing, and I'm sorry, I'm just so because you're on that. At Costco, when you use the reader with your card, is that safe? Is that kind of like using your Apple Pay in terms of safety? You know what I'm talking about? When you go to the gas station at Costco, they've got a reader for your card.
So
That
do you hold it? Okay, so that's a foreign thing to me, is to going to a gas station. I
oh,
apologize.
that's right. Yeah.
But is the reader, and I'm just joking. Is the reader one where you insert the card with the chip, or you hover the card over it, or you slide it?
You hover it over it, and as I'm recalling, I think they've got an Apple Pay kind of insignia there. But yeah, you just hover
Well,
it.
so when you're doing gas, you're using the Costco card, which is double purpose, using it's for your membership and for your credit
Visa.
card, right?
Right.
Okay. So the swiping is the worst. A chip, and I'm assuming that the swipe creates a one-time use number that works just like Apple Pay and things like that.
You mean the Hoover as opposed to the swipe?
The hover?
Hover as opposed to the swipe. You don't want
Yeah,
to
so
swipe.
well, swipe is terrible because a swipe
Yeah.
is magnetic strip, and it doesn't generate a one-time use number. It's your card number.
Okay.
So you want to avoid swipe. Frankly, the easiest way to pay for anything is the Apple Watch. And Apple Pay on the Apple Watch is the easiest and most secure way to pay for anything. Now that brings up, nobody's asked this question, but it comes up. Well, what about all my rewards and things like that? So anytime you use these alternate ways of sending your credit card information, it is just as if you'd use the swipe, because you're using that credit card and you're getting all the rewards and everything else that the card has. It's just simply a different way of it transmitting your card number. Okay. All right. And I mean, again, like I say, the Apple Watch is the best. And if you haven't done Apple Pay, try it one time on the Apple. And so I know everybody's leery to put their credit card into their phone in Apple Pay, but just believe that it's so much safer. And in fact, all through Japan and everywhere I travel now, Europe, I mean, South Africa, for God's sakes, the easiest way was to use Apple Pay. In fact, we were in the Falkland Islands, and we were at this whaling station, and they had a little, interesting enough, the post office had the best gift shop, and then there was a gift shop there too, but that's about it, because this is like, nobody goes to these places. They're the most wonderful place in the world. But a lady that I got to know, her and her husband, well, she was on shore, and she comes up to me and goes, "Oh man, I left my credit card on the ship." And you get used to that when you're on this thing where you don't go on land very often. And she said, "Can you do you mind?" And I says, I says, "Yeah, okay, you can use my credit card, no problem." I said, "My interest rate isn't very high." And she laughed and stuff. And so we got up to the cash register, and I saw that they had a reader there. And it's actually more prevalent in other countries than the US, but the US is growing dramatically. So I went with my watch, and I double clicked the button on my watch, and I just had my watch hit the reader, and it went through. And she's fairly techie, but it was like, wow, she told her husband, "Hey, look at this," And so when we got back in the ship where we had good Wi-Fi, I said, "Yeah, you've always got your phone with you. Even if you don't have an Apple Watch, you can do this exact same thing from your phone. And it's so easy and super secure." So it took us 5 minutes. We set her phone up, so she now had Apple Pay. So it didn't matter where her credit card was, and it's safer too, because, what if you get your wallet stolen? Well, your phone, you usually protect pretty well when you're traveling, as you do your credit cards. So I just encourage you to use it. A great way to test it out is you can go get a dollar drink at McDonald's once you enter it into your device, and go just pay there. With the phone, you just hold the phone up to the device. It pops up. If you have multiple cards, there'll be a default one. Otherwise, you tap it, and then you do your biometric recognition, and boom, it's done. No extra fee to you. It's fantastic.
What?
And the nice thing is, you can even have it so it'll give you notifications like, oh, somebody just used your credit card for this. Well, you used it, so you know. All right, Ellie, go right ahead, please.
Yeah, I love facial recognition on the iPhone, but on my MacBook Pro, which is a 2018, it doesn't have facial recognition. So I have used the fingerprint, except that it doesn't recognize my fingerprints. I've had to re-enter fingerprints 3 or 4 times, and haptic touch in general on my phone. I don't know if it's my fingers, my electromagnetic charge on my or whatever, but I have a very tough time using fingerprints for recognition. And I don't know if you have any insights on that.
So when you go to do you redo your fingerprint, deleting the old one and putting a new one in?
I have done both ways, and
Okay.
so
So
what's
yeah,
the
and obviously make sure that you could get a little alcohol swab and just do the fingerprint reader, because it's been great for me. And I have it on my keyboard and of course on my MacBook Pro. So and it's one main reason to have the new keyboards. But what happens is, and this really came up when we first had Touch ID on the phone, is your fingerprint changes over the seasons. And the shape of your fingerprint, and it's a tough game to go back and forth because you want it to be very secure, but you also want it to be functional. The recommendation has always been, for instance, on a phone, and I think it works on the keyboard. If you want to increase, so you set yours up originally, it works for 4 weeks. Then some reason it stops working.
Right.
At that time, don't delete the old one, but add a new fingerprint with your finger just the way it is.
Okay.
And when you do it too, it says at the end to move your finger a little. Well, you don't roll your finger. You have it come down a little bit more to one side or the other side, things like that. And it will learn more of that whole finger because we don't always hold it at the same angle or things like that. But what has happened is the moisture in your body has changed the shape of your fingerprint over time.
Okay.
So if you can build up a catalog of those, it helps. I believe you're limited to 5 on the keyboard, if I'm not mistaken. But that's one way to keep trying it and seeing.
All right.
The other thing is, I know, and I'm not sure if it works. Let me see if it works with the keyboard. So on the phone, let me try this. No, I don't want to remove it. So let me see if it does it. I'm using my fingerprint to see it. No, but on the phone, if you go to Touch ID, if you still have a phone that has Touch ID, go into this and rest your finger up and down, and you'll see one of your fingerprints, quote unquote, will turn gray every time you rest it there. And what that's doing is you're giving it more data so that it's more likely to be a good one. I don't know if there's capacity for this on the keyboard.
Okay.
So yeah, and my thought is not to delete old ones because your fingerprint will probably come back around to where it was.
Yeah.
So
Depends on how dehydrated I am or something. Well,
no, it seriously, it's twofold. It's the moisture in your skin, but secondly, it's the amount of water you have in your skin. I mean, think of a balloon. If you drew a fingerprint on a balloon and you blew the balloon up, the
Right.
fingerprint was different than when it was less.
That's good to know.
Okay, and good luck with that.
Thanks.
Kathy, go right ahead.
Two questions. Is it easy enough to change the default credit card in my Apple Pay? The one I always
Yes.
use is about 5 cards down. It's
Yeah, so you go into whatever device it is, and in fact, I assume you're
well,
probably gonna
I use my watch actually.
right. So let's go there and I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna go to settings in my phone. And then first we'll look at it on the phone and then we'll look at it on the watch. And you just go to wallet. Okay.
Wallet and Apple Pay.
Apple Pay.
Okay.
Yeah. And then let me
Let's
see.
see. This one seems to be in the right.
Oh, so if you go down a little ways, you'll see transaction defaults
Oh, okay.
and you select your default card there.
Thank you. Okay.
Now, let me go ahead and look on the watch app.
On the phone. Okay.
On the phone, on the watch
Yeah.
app.
Yeah, that's where I have the problem is my watch.
Yeah, and I go to wallet and Apple Pay.
Oh.
And
We'll back up a
yeah,
little.
same exact screen.
Oh, wait. Default card, Amazon Prime. Okay.
And do your other ones show up?
Yeah, they do. Okay.
Has that one not
Change
been
it.
showing up?
They've all been showing up. I need to scroll through them. I guess I'll change my default card. Thank you.
Yeah,
Got
and
it.
unfortunately, I don't know if you can move move the.
I think this will be perfect though.
Okay.
Yeah,
Deb?
perfect. Okay.
Deb,
And
you
then-
had something?
Yeah. And then I have one more question. How do I know, can I put a setting on my computer or my phone to have that, the key, was it pass key? How do I find that pass key? That sounds really easy and handy to have it use a pass key rather than the password or passcode.
Well,
Or does my computer just do it? The websites just do it?
whatever vendor you're transacting with has to have it.
Okay.
And then it should be pretty, it should be seamless. And in fact, I've noticed it so seamless that I think I'm in a password window and I'm in, passkey. So I go back. If you guys, you can go to my passwords video. And if
Oh.
at the end we have time, please bring this up and I'll dig into that. But
Okay.
and Apple has great primers on it. So, and it's becoming, when I originally did that, I basically was like 2 years ago, and I've done one since. But I mean, it's great, and it's so
Okay.
seamless that it may be doing it without you knowing it. And in
Okay.
fact, that's where it was. And that kind of goes back to the earlier one that was asked about your Apple ID. Well, in those cases, when you enter your Apple ID, you're not giving them your Apple ID and your Apple ID password. That stays in your device. That is saying, oh, this is a trusted device.
Oh.
And the nice thing is it doesn't have to give any other information. The other thing I'll point out, since we did talk about autofill, in Safari, you definitely want to have autofill on, and you want to have your main contact card or the My Card be your complete address and stuff, because it's very beneficial and it eliminates a lot of typos. And you go to a brand new website you've never been at, and they ask you to fill out your name and your address and all that stuff, and it autofills, and you're going, my gosh, how do they have my information? This is Big Brother. Well, man, this is terrible. Well, what it actually is they don't have the information, but they see this form that it says address, city, state, etc., and it's reaching into your address book, your contacts, and saying, oh, fill it in with this. And so that's your information that you put in and you're allowing it to autofill. And you can obviously delete those things, but it makes it so much easier to fill that stuff in. So, all righty. Roy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, two things about the Apple Pay. One, as far as getting your rewards, when I charge something on my Apple Pay, I get money back. So I think it's the same. May not be the same
When
percentage,
you're talking
but
about when you charge on Apple Card.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Right. So that's your
That's what I
reward.
thought you were
So,
talking about.
so reward. No,
So
it's
anyway,
Apple
I get money
Pay
back.
versus, we need to really define that. There's a difference between Apple Pay and Apple Card. The Apple Card, you get rewards and it's back to you as cash.
Right.
Okay. Other cards, you get miles, points, or some are cash back too. So,
Yeah.
but none of those rewards change whether you're using Apple Pay, because Apple Card is just a credit card that actually can use Apple Pay or other things. And on it, sometimes there's incentives. You get a little more reward if you use Apple Pay with your Apple Card.
Yeah. And on that, when I signed up for it, I got a MasterCard, but can I load a Visa on that so I can use it at Costco?
Okay, so again, we need to differentiate
Okay.
Apple Pay, which uses wallet, and the Apple Card. The Apple Card, you're talking about the white titanium card, right?
Yeah.
That's Goldman Sachs, which, by the way, is going to be going away. We don't know who's going to replace it, but Goldman Sachs has lost money on it, but it'll still continue. But anyway, that's the Apple Card. So forget that it says Apple, forget everything else. Just think of that as a credit card. So when I go to do a transaction, if I pull my wallet out of my pocket, or ladies out of your purse, you have your credit cards there and you choose which credit card you want to use. It could be the Apple Card. And I'm talking about just, and we're doing a hard transaction here. You're handing the cashier the card. So it could be a Citibank card, it could be a Chase, a Wells Fargo, whatever. It could be a debit card, any of those. That's coming out of your wallet and you're paying for it. Well, on your Apple devices, you're able to store credit cards and debit cards and even transit cards. Like in Japan, your transit card can pay for other stuff. Anyway, it stores them. And when you go to pay for something, for instance, I was on the island in the Falklands, and I brought out my watch, I double tapped it, and then I had a choice of the cards that are in my Apple Wallet. And I chose to do this one because I have certain cards that have no foreign transaction fees and things like that. So that's just, again, using your wallet. Don't conflate Apple Pay and Apple Card. They're two totally different things. Now, you can do MasterCard, Visa, American Express, debit cards, virtually anything you want can be done inside of Apple Pay. The Apple credit card is a Goldman Sachs card, and I thought it was a Discover card. It might be a MasterCard, but I can't remember. I don't have mine in front of me.
Yeah,
so.
mine is MasterCard, but thanks. I do confuse the two terms.
Well, and you're not the only one, so I'm glad you brought it up, because, and that's why I went back to the basics of why it's called a wallet and how would you think back about this in lay terms. If we weren't doing this digitally, how would we be doing this? And it kind of gives you the pathway to do it this way.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Bev, go right ahead. This is, you guys, this is helping me. My brain is finally starting to work a little bit.
I think I need to go to baby steps on the watch. I routinely am using Pay, and I think I solved my problem with tips that have already been talked about here, but just wanted to verify a couple things. I was just successfully added a credit card onto my watch that was in my phone app wallet. Okay,
Right.
that's good with the tips. So when I have just never used anything when I pay with my watch, it goes directly to Apple Card. So if I want to use another item that's in my watch scroll, I just tap that and then
You can, yes, you
flip it
can
over the
scroll,
screen.
you can, when you double tap the side, you scroll up or down to either with your finger or with the crown,
Yeah.
and you determine, and then you tap on the one you want to use. And like we did earlier, is if you want to change your default card, it can be different for your phone and different for your watch if you want, but it's done in the watch app, in wallet in the watch app, or if it's for your phone, it's in the wallet app on the phone.
And I
And
think someone
setting
was
to
asking,
set one as a default count. I have not found a way to change the order that the cards are displayed, with
that,
the exception of the default card.
that I was just going to ask that because I have this Clipper Transit card that's now in front of another credit card, but still my Apple Pay comes up.
Do you use it?
The Clipper card,
Yeah.
I haven't yet. I think
Okay.
you use that in the Bay Area, right? So I put it
I
in.
I have no idea. So,
Okay, so if I choose to
but see, sometimes those aren't credit cards.
no,
Yeah.
it's a transit card, the Clipper.
Yeah, it's a transit card. So those are just going to show up in wallet anyway. So
Yeah, if you want to get one, I would go to the wallet app on the phone probably and try to remove it there. As opposed
yeah,
to
and the
trying
other
to
thing
remove it
is
on the
you might play with the order if you're bored one day,
Yeah.
and you can try and do it as you add your cards in, what order do they come in? And then knowing that you can always make a default. So is the newest on the top or is the newest on the bottom? And I'm sorry, I can't tell you, but I actually think you would be able to find a Google search that would find out for
Yeah, the newest one I just moved into the wallet so it would show up on the watch. It moved into the bottom, but okay, yeah, it looks like I
you.
have
The
three.
newest went to the bottom.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, and
good.
yeah,
Good
so,
news. And
okay.
if not, Google's your friend. So
Yep, and another successful event on our Zoom call.
yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Go ahead.
Thanks, Ken, and thank you so much for sharing
And
your
just
time with us
for
today.
you guys, so Carolyn will be next, and then Mary, because that way I'm not a surprise on you guys, because some of these are lengthy. So
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your time when you're not feeling well. I had two questions, but I think one just got answered. But one of them is about credit cards, is about the Apple Card. There's one place I go that really want to go there, and they do not accept Apple Pay. But every time I go in, I ask them, would you please consider this? Would you please talk to the boss and ask them to consider it? Is it okay to swipe the Apple Card?
well, actually, again, think of the Apple. You don't conflate Apple Pay and Apple Card. They're two totally different things. Apple Pay is the wallet and all that. The Apple Card, first and foremost, swiping should be your last way of doing any transaction. Using the chip or the hover are much preferred because they create a one-time use code. The strip, I'm not sure, and not necessarily.
Maybe they use it as a chip. I'm not sure, but they don't accept Apple Pay.
Well, do you insert your card into the mouth of the thing?
They take the card.
They take the card and they might use, and sometimes
I'm standing there at the counter, and I'm not really sure because I'm anxious to get out with the pizza.
Yeah. So sometimes the tap to pay, which is what that other one is, it's got a little like Wi-Fi type logo. That works too, and that's the second worst, but it's still okay. So by the way, is this a pizza chain place or something?
No, it's not. It was a chain. It was a part of
okay.
Pizza, and they went on their own, and it's now called Owl's Pizza or something like that. It's in Roseville,
Well,
and
the
we
only
really
reason
like
I
their
asked,
pizza. Maybe I
And the
should
only
pick
reason
that.
I ask is because many times now, you know, if you're going to some place, you can pay for it in the app using Apple Pay or storing your credit card in on the app. And then you don't even have to transact anything at the window. So that, and I don't know that they would do that. And it sounds like not, but in the bigger chains, you know, like even Panda Express and places like that,
Yeah.
it makes it nice because you're not having to transact anything. But the places that do that probably also have Apple Pay. And for me,
Yeah.
a drive-through with the Apple Watch is the easiest thing in the world. So, and by
I
the way, on the
love,
Apple Watch, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I love using my Apple Watch and the Apple Card, and I'm glad that I have both. But let me ask you one more question before you go on what you're going to say. I didn't understand how to get by Costco because it's a MasterCard. That Apple Card's a MasterCard.
It doesn't
and I
matter.
have
It
that.
doesn't matter whether it's MasterCard, Visa, Discovery. None of that makes a difference.
Right, right. But I had that set up as my default card, and I didn't realize that with my Apple Watch, I can just scroll to the Citi, whatever it is, Citi, Bank of
Yeah, the
America,
Citi.
whatever it is, Costco. I just scroll to that, and I can still use Apple Pay. I mean, I can still use my Apple Watch to pay at Costco. Is that
Oh,
correct?
absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's wonderful.
So the deal is, if you're doing Apple Pay with a phone, you hold it near the reader and it automatically pops up. Or you can double tap the sleep wake button or the home button, and that brings it up. On the watch, you double tap the oval button that's below the crown. You double
All right,
tap, that brings up your carousel of cards, and you tap the card you want to be using, and then you hold it over the reader, and it's instant.
I just realized that this morning because it always came up with my default card, my Apple Card, and I just realized I can choose other cards on my watch.
Yep.
Thank you.
And you know, the thing is I have different cards for different rewards, and the only downside to this is I used to always write on Sharpie on my card. I would always write the like no foreign transaction fees. I would say how much I get back at restaurants, how much I get back at that. And so, you know, but I can't Sharpie that over the thing on mine. But I pretty much limited to 3 different cards that are for specific purposes. So, all right.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Mary, go right ahead, and then Charles.
How did my hand get lowered?
I'm sorry?
My hand was up before Roy, and somehow it got removed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead. I think, you know, we've got some people helping, and you might have mistook that.
Okay.
So go first, and then Mary and Charles.
So Ken, every time since I got my new iPhone and a new watch, I can't use Apple Pay at a store with my watch, and it's just got me really buffaloed. I was in Sprouts and there was nobody there, and I told her, okay, I'm having problems with this. You know, since there's nobody here, let's take some time. I could not get it to work.
Will it work from your phone?
Yeah, my phone's fine.
Okay. Well, but did you try it?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then what my recommendation would be is you go delete the cards, and none of your cards come up on the Apple Watch?
Now I don't know what you're
And is it only this store, or has it been a problem at other stores?
Oh no, it doesn't work anywhere.
Okay, and how do you tell me how you do you double tap the button to bring it up?
Yeah, I have it up and
now you would hold it near the reader, but is that how you've been doing it, was my question.
I get a message. Yeah, now I'm sorry. I don't know how to.
No, so let's just talk about the sequence, because it's a lot different than the phone. You double tap the button, your cards come up, and you simply then put it on the reader.
Correct.
And is it coming up with the cards?
Is it coming up?
When you double
yes,
tap
my app. Yes,
phone,
it's the only one I have on there because.
Oh, so you only have one card, so that makes it simpler. and then you put it on the reader, but there's no reaction from the reader.
Right. No, I can't. I move my arm all over the place and it just never.
Yeah, you look for that little Wi-Fi like logo.
Yeah.
And is that everywhere?
Yes. Hasn't worked since I got the
So
two
my
new devices.
recommendation would be delete the card,
Okay.
re-add the card, see if it works.
Okay.
And if that doesn't do it, completely reset the phone and do a repair. And I'm sorry, not the phone, the watch. Do a repair and then add the card again.
Okay. Okay.
And if
All
that
right.
doesn't do it, I'd say you have to go to Apple.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry we skipped you there. Go ahead, Mary.
Well, a couple of things on hers. It just begs the question, could it be set up on only cellular for the phone and then it wouldn't work on a Wi-Fi reader? Is that even possible?
Well, actually, do you keep your phone on all the time and on cellular?
For her, not me. I don't.
Yeah, no, I'm asking Carolyn.
Yeah.
Because
Do
I
you,
don't have,
do you disable your phone or anything like that normally, or do you just leave it on and going all the time?
it's going on pretty much all the time.
Okay. Well, no, and Mary brings up a good point. So, the other thing you can always do, and this could be the first thing you can do is, we've learned how to do hard resets on our phone, which is volume up, press and release quickly, volume down, press and release quickly, and then press and hold the power button on the side until you see the Apple logo and wait until you see the Apple logo. On your Apple Watch, there's another hard reset you can do too. I don't encourage you to do it right now, but you would take both of the buttons, the crown and the oval button. Yes, if you have an Ultra, there's another button on the other side, but disregard that. If you press and hold both of those and continue to press and hold even after the screen comes up and wait until you see the Apple logo, that is a nice thing to do and it cleans things up. I pretty much do that once a month, or if things are weird.
So
Good. Mary, was there something else?
yeah, there was actually, on something has happened now, and my modular face on my phone won't move from cancel at the top, grid view, list view, because what I was trying to do was figure out, when you have your modular view and then you swipe up and there's a list of things where you can put on the theater face and that. And I wanted to add wallet to that. Can I? What's the easiest way to get to
Well, why
wallet?
would you want to add wallet to that?
Well, what's the easiest way on my phone to get to wallet?
Why would you want to add wallet to it? The easiest way to get to wallet is double tapping the oval button.
That's what I wanted to know. What's the easiest way? Tap the.
Yeah.
Okay. But now my watch is stuck on not one of the faces that I'm choosing. Oh, wait a minute. Edit.
And if you have to do a hard reboot, you can do a hard reboot.
Okay, I'll do that.
And they've also changed it now. We used to get into that, your battery and all that. You don't swipe up anymore to it. You hit the button. They've changed how we interact with it, and they didn't tell us. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Charles, welcome.
Thank you. Can my iMac 27, I shut it off at night. When I turn it on in the morning, the printer has automatically shut off, and when I press the on button on the printer, nothing happens. The only way I can get the printer to go is to remove the electric cord and plug it back in. I wonder if you have
what brand printer?
HP.
How old is it?
3 or 4 years.
So Does it do the same thing if you don't shut your Mac down?
No,
And so, again, so you shut the Mac down. Do you shut the printer down at night?
no,
But it seems to shut down at night.
Are you wireless or corded?
wireless.
So Charles, again, you shut your iMac down, you fire it up the next morning, and the printer is not alive or awake or anything.
Correct.
And do you try hitting the power button at that point?
Yes, it doesn't
And,
go on,
and nothing happens.
right?
Okay. And then you have to unplug and plug it back in.
Correct.
For what it's worth, this is Ellie Shaw. I
Yeah.
have had tremendous problems with an older, maybe 5 or 6-year-old HP printer. Lost the ability to scan directly to my MacBook Pro, and in researching it, the latest HP firmware, which came down like in October, screwed up several things, and there's no going back. And so I've had problems with HP firmware having overridden the old thing. So I don't know if that's of any help whatsoever.
Sorry.
No, that is. Well, ironically, though, sometimes, and he may have, a lot of times they do the firmware upgrades in the background, and
Yeah,
and,
never
and
asked.
normally you would say to fix it, you might try a firmware update. But, Charles, the only thing I can recommend is to do a Google search using your particular printer model and the malady that it is, and just put it in regular text like that and see what happens. See what you find. I am still a big fan of HP laser printers, but I am no longer a fan for a long time. And Pete, bless his heart, works pretty much for HP. There's just issues, constantly dropping out Wi-Fi, things like that. So, I would say, so why do you shut down every night? Would be the first question.
I thought that was standard operating procedure. Am I wrong?
No, no. When you say shut down, you mean go up there and go to sleep, or you say shut down?
Shut down.
Nah, don't need that. I recommend you should do a restart at least every 2 weeks, or if anything's weird and wonky. But other than that, no, there's really no need to. The computer goes into hibernation, and if it prevents this problem from happening, I actually suspect, Charles, does yours have the touch screen on it where you touch the screen and it kind of
Yes.
wakes up? Have you tried just touching the screen to see if it wakes up before hitting the power button?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing is there might even be a setting in there about shutting down. I mean, part of the problem with all this stuff is they make these things so they can get Energy Star compliance, that little badge, when they use so little energy anyway, but they do that to comply, and it really creates problems. And so I would say only reboot every 2 weeks or
Okay.
when needed.
Okay, I do that.
See if that helps it.
I do the restart every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the easiest thing.
Yeah, and then see if that persists. And after the restart, you may have to do this stupid little, back and forth with the plug and everything. My recommendation would be get the plug up on the top of the desk where it's much easier to get to.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just leave it on at night. That'll solve the problem.
Yeah, and see if that works. And then the other thing is it actually doesn't hurt to occasionally, like we say on doing a hard reset on the phone and stuff, if a printer's acting up many times, just disconnecting from power and powering it back up helps. So
Okay, thank you.
Gosh, great questions. And we don't worry, we will have time for Sonoma because I pretty much I did this 2 nights ago with Lincoln Hills group on the one I have, so we should be fine. So right now, Barbara, go right ahead.
I have two questions, but I think they're fairly brief. The first one is kind of related to what you were talking to a second ago. I have a MacBook Pro and but I pretty much use that almost like my CPU, and I've got a separate larger monitor and I use a regular keyboard. I think I have read that it's a good idea occasionally to unplug the MacBook Pro and run the battery to keep the battery life going. Is that true? And if so, how often should I just run it on battery every now and again?
Well, yeah. So lithium ion batteries are sophisticated batteries. And most batteries have, and including them, have what's called a charge cycle. So in other words, and that determines the longevity of the battery life. And when we say the longevity of the battery life, it's gotten to be where you get what's called degradation. And degradation is where, well, actually, let's just explain this because batteries are so much a part of our life, and those of us with electric cars and all that. A battery has what's called an anode and a cathode, plus or minus, right? So what happens is when the battery is charged, or when you're, excuse me, when you're charging a battery, the ions, which are just these little atomic things, go from, and I can't remember which way, and it doesn't matter, but they go from the anode to the cathode, let's say. So as these ions go across, and you've loaded up the cathode with all these ions, the battery is then full. When you discharge the battery, those ions are going from the other, they're going the other direction. And every time you do this cycle, whether it be you recharge at 30% or you recharge at 50%, wherever it is you do it, these ions move back and forth. But think of like a filter. After a while, not after a while, but every time, not every ion can make the round trip. It gets stuck in the filter, kind of, so to speak, okay? And what that does is, if not as many ions can go back and forth, you have what's called degradation. If you go to your iPhone, you can go in there and you can look under battery health. And it'll say, even though your phone's charged to 100%, it might say 87%. And that just means that the new 100% of your charge is 87% of what it was in the beginning. So in other words, you're only getting 87% of what you started out with. So thereby you have 13% degradation. And what that just means is you don't have as much. Let's just say somebody put bricks in your fuel tank and you can't put as much gas in your fuel tank now, right? So that being said, that's kind of based on what's called a charge cycle. And a charge cycle is a charge cycle of one would be, say, from 100% charge down to 20% and then back to 100%. 45% also would equate to one charge cycle. So in other words, it's more or less how many times you've done this. But realizing how many charge cycles you go through is what will degrade the battery. The chemistries in the batteries are very unique, and they're very different for different things. Tesla, for instance, has, I believe, almost 5 different battery chemistries, whether it's for home charging, industrial charging, car batteries, performance models, etc. And just in those amount, they have different ones. So the chemistries in these batteries is the real alchemist in the whole thing. I'm a firm believer. So there are computers in the batteries and the chargers that say, okay, how are we charging this? And Apple has now devices. They've done so much that they say, like I've had this happen on my MacBook Pro. It says, well, we're only going to charge to 80% because you're not using it, you're not being mobile and things like that. And then you can force it to go to 100% because exercising the battery to its limits, whether it be all the way low or all the way high, has a greater degradation factor than if you operate kind of in the middle ranges there.
Huh.
That being said, an iPhone battery life has improved dramatically, and I would say you should count on 3 years, maybe 4, of good life out of the battery, and then after that, you're going to have degradation. It'll be gradual, and I'm saying iPhone and iPad, and it will get worse, but you can always replace those batteries. Obviously, in a car, it's a big difference, but you've got a big battery in there. But what it is, for instance, on my Tesla, I generally charge it because I have enough range that I only charge it to 80% unless I'm getting ready to embark on a trip. And at that point, then I charge it to 100% because you don't want a battery to sit at 100%. Now, that being said, many companies will kind of hide that 100% and may say, well, I'm at 100%, but they show you that and there's a buffer left over. In fact, if we look at mine, so you can look at mine here is my battery. So it's on hold at 80%. Can you see it in the upper right-hand corner of the screen?
Yeah, it's a little hard to read. Yeah, I can.
Okay, let me see if I can. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my battery reading on my MacBook Pro, which is almost always powered. And I just choose to do that for convenience. Now,
Right.
if I'm getting, so it's holding it at 80, which is fine because it's got super battery life in these new devices. But I could click charge to full now. And that would then say, bring it up to 100% because I'm getting ready to get on a plane tomorrow, something like that. So the phone pretty much has the same capabilities. But they're very smart, and the incremental difference it makes is not worth the hassle.
Okay.
Now, that being said, I treat a phone differently than I would an iPad or a Mac because I remember the Paradise Fire, and I remember 2 people that I've come in contact with that had 8 minutes to leave their house before going through the tunnel of fire. And at that point, if I had said, well, to conserve my battery in my phone to make it last longer, over 3 years, I'm not going to charge it tonight. Because you might remember to take your phone, but many people didn't remember to take their chargers. So, and the phone is so essential from a security, safety aspect that mine's always on a charger. And yes, I know it degrades my battery life a bit, but I change my phone often enough, it doesn't really matter. So, and Apple has great software to do this, and I'm letting it manage it. I haven't told it to not do that on this one, on the MacBook Pro. So, it's I don't know, and for some reason I have raised my own hand, so I want to. That's pretty tricky.
You can ask yourself a question.
Yeah, but how do I mean, first of all, how the heck did I do it? But I don't. Where's my? Well, okay, well, whatever. That's funny. Oh, it's gone. There's ghosts. All right, and does that answer your question about the battery? Because I mean,
Yeah,
it's
except the last
prudent.
thing you said something about the Apple has some sort of internal mechanism for how it chooses to charge it or something. You said Apple.
Yeah.
Do
So
its own thing. What is it that it does?
well, it's just like Apple, it does it in the background and it does it wonderfully, and you just say, okay. But what it really does is it looks at your charging patterns, it looks at your battery life, it looks at a bunch of different parameters, and it adjusts it accordingly to what it thinks will be the best for you.
Oh, okay.
And obviously, you know, there was a point at one time, I remember, you remember the old battery gate where there was this big class action lawsuit about Apple was hobbling older iPhones because they would slow down the processor. What happened in this case is the iPhone, or any phone, is a critical device for most people. And the most important thing in that would be to get through one day, because if your phone dies at 5 o'clock, that's just not going to cut it. So what happens is, as batteries degrade, and of course they have then less life, but let's take it to an extreme. Let's say you have 50% degradation. A battery that used to last for 10 hours, well, actually more like 12, will now only last for 6. So Apple said, well, you know, its first job is to make and receive phone calls, and those are very critical for safety, etc. So they put in a thing where if your battery was low, or if your battery, excuse me, had degradation, it would look at your schedule and say, you know what, we need to slow the processor down, the actual chip in the phone, so that we can increase the longevity of the battery between charges so that it will last a day. Well, of course, Apple being so wealthy and they're the greedy people, they say, oh, this is a scam. You didn't do all this. And realistically, they just did this in the background. And the geeky people said, well, we want to have a choice in this. But that's just not like Apple. It's like we're helping, and we have all this data. Let's make it right for these individuals. They were slowing the phone down so it would get through the day. Because back in that case, your phone would like get to 20%, and then sometimes it would just plain shut down right then. And that was very inconvenient. But it was, at the time, the chips were more greedy for power, but secondly, the batteries were not near as sophisticated as they are now. So battery life constantly improves on the iPhone, and battery life is so little of an issue in Apple products anymore. But they had that, and so Apple finally said, okay, you can choose to have it slow the processor down. Because I'd much rather have a phone last for 10 hours and the processor be a little slower than have the processor eat up the battery and not have my phone functional.
Right.
But
Right.
the lawsuit was that they didn't give you a choice. But anyway, it's a choice now, and it's gotten much better. But again, it's much ado about nothing, but I trust and believe, and I research this a lot, you know, because I have so many batteries under my car. That's always a big deal to me. And I do try to be very good about how I treat my battery in my Tesla, as far as not letting it get too low, not overcharging it all the time, and things like that. But what's really weird is one of the Tesla models, the Model Y, they have what's called an LFP battery, and they encourage you to charge it to 100% at all time, because there is no degradation from the battery going to 100%, because it's LFP, which is different. It's lithium, F for iron, and P for phosphate. And it's a whole different chemistry, but it works really well. It doesn't give you the same performance, but you get better longevity. So,
Can I follow up on something you brought up, Ken, in your answer, and that is the Paradise Fire. So I've now got a couple of power banks because I live in a fire-prone area too. How often should you charge those power banks so that if you do have an emergency, you've got the power supply ready to go? And I haven't done it yet, so I don't know how to tell whether the thing is fully charged or not. So how do you keep a power bank fully charged in case you need to take it quickly in an emergency?
well, first of all, I always recommend good power adapters, because all this great stuff is no good if in fact it starts a house fire from charging. So
Right.
Anker is one of the brands I highly recommend, Anker. Belkin is very good. And someone else can probably pop up with others, but they're, you just have to be, it's very, very important.
I've got Anchor.
Yeah, and then you're good. So they also have some of these same power management things inside them, but they're not as expensive as an iPhone. So I would always have them always plugged in.
Okay.
Now, long-term storage of any lithium ion battery is best at 60% charge. And that's just for its life. But the problem is, again, you're talking emergency versus, a cordless drill. But I just charge mine. Mine are just always charged because when I need them, I need them.
Right.
And so, but yeah, I would say that would be the case. It probably wouldn't hurt to unplug them every so often, or they do hold a charge for a long time. And so once it's full, they have very little what is called phantom drain. Not like the phone, not like the iPad, not like the car. They have phantom drain. The battery itself, since it's only running the little circuit board on there. My gosh, I have a one I got years ago that not an Anker one, but it can be off the charger for 4 or 5 months and it's still at 99 or 100%. And I only know that because it has a little indicator window.
Okay.
So there's nothing to really draw them. So don't feel like you have to have them plugged in all the time.
Okay. Thanks.
Good. All right. Bev, last question from Bev, and we'll have time at the end too. So Bev, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick reprise. Following up on Barbara's question on having the laptop plugged in, because my new MacTop Air, I just leave it plugged in, or it's okay to leave it plugged in, powered, charging to 100% all the time.
Well, but you might notice on mine, it stops at 80 if I've left it plugged in a long time, if it's doing that.
Yeah. So, because years ago on a Dell computer laptop,
Okay, well that's ancient history.
Ancient history, yeah, because he took the battery out because I was always connected to electricity. So that's old news. So I am.
And one thing I should mention is, well, first of all, on a Mac, you're not going to take any batteries out and stuff, but
Right.
Always see if your battery gets super warm. And actually, the electronics in there will go to where your charging logo is, and it might say needs service or things like that. Apple's very good about that. But batteries, if they're going bad, no relation to all this charging hooplas we're running through and stuff. When they can go bad, they start to swell a little. So I have, in fact, the one battery I bought years ago, 2 batteries from Best Buy, and I noticed that one of them was swelling, even though it had a metal case around it. So I will not use that battery anymore, and I will be recycling that battery because it's just not worth the risk. And batteries, when they swell, is an indication of some contamination inside the battery, and that can be real issues.
So I am doing no harm by just leaving it plugged in. There's no need to do the exercise of letting it cycle down a little bit and plugging it back in.
Well, is it a M1 Mac?
It's the M2 MacBook Air.
Yeah, so it probably has I would set it to the default settings and let it do its thing like mine, where it goes to 80. We there's a lot of really smart engineers that know a lot more of this than we do, but people want to overthink everything.
And I find that default setting by going up to the little Apple icon and go to system settings.
Well, you can go up to the battery setting at the top. So if I click on my battery, and then I can go to battery settings.
Okay, click on battery. Okay.
And then I'm trying to get my battery settings up. Come on.
Because I have lately I'm still using, if I go traveling, I use my 2015 MacBook Air because I'm just using it for email when I go on the road. So in case,
Well, that's your choice. Your new one's
right. So I
much
just,
better machine.
yeah, well, yeah. Okay, so that's where to go battery and then battery preferences. I'm looking at my 2015, but okay.
Well, it won't be as sophisticated on that.
Sure. But that's where to go. Okay.
You know, it's
That
kind of the
sounds
old
good.
thing, and this goes around all the time. And I choose, and you know me, I'm not complacent most times, but I choose path of convenience, path of least resistance, and I trust those guys. Everybody tries to second guess them. So
Yeah,
So Ken, what is the
Oh,
setting
not
you
doing
do when
that.
you go to
Okay,
the battery icon? I kind of missed that.
well, just go to system preferences or battery or settings. If you're on a laptop, you go up to the battery logo, click, and
Yeah.
come on down to battery settings.
And then what do you want to set it at?
I said defaults,
Okay.
and I think it's reset defaults or something like that. I can't see the screen right now. Sorry.
Okay.
And in
All right.
addition to swelling, what are the other indications that you need to replace the battery in either your iPhone or your laptops or iPad?
Well, the battery health is where you go into if it gets below 85%. And then and the thing on the laptops, it will come up and say needs service is usually what it says when you click on that logo up there.
But once it gets below 85%, then you should begin to or you should replace the battery.
Well, depending on if you feel like it's hindering your performance of the device.
Okay.
But before that, probably not much. And always only have Apple replace your battery.
Right.
You pay $20 more, but believe me, there's so many other little components, and the fact of the replacement battery is officially an Apple battery. And so the whole deal of this, and nobody's ever mentioned it, but I read between the line years ago, before the iPhone came out, most phones had replaceable batteries. And everybody looked at this at Apple and it goes, oh, they're just trying to do a money grab to make sure that you buy your Apples only or your batteries only from Apple. And I totally disagree because I look at it the other way. First of all, Apple being a very large company, the iPhone being a huge part of that company. If you had the ability to replace the battery, you could buy a battery anywhere and put it in the phone. There is a tremendous amount of power inside that battery that you charge on your nightstand and that you keep in your pocket. And while it would seem to make sense to just get a new battery and replace it, well, you don't know the lineage of that battery. And there's no real test. I mean, it's so sophisticated, and it's a bomb getting ready that wants to always go off. So when this came up, I said, wow, it'd be nice to have, but I got thinking about it, and I'm saying, by making it a proprietary battery, first of all, Apple doesn't have to encase it in plastic, so they can make it take up less room, and they put it in foil and it's all secure and all this. But I also said, if it was replaceable and someone has a new iPhone and after a year they decide, oh, I need to replace the battery, and they put a cheap battery in there and the battery blows up, not blows up, it'll just catch fire and do damage, whether it be charging or in a pocket. And that the news would read, Apple iPhone 4 blows up in pocket. But there would be never a mention of the fact that it was a replacement battery. So while you can replace the batteries in iPhone with other batteries, That's why you want the Apple one, because there's under such scrutiny in the manufacturing of that battery. Because if problems happen with that battery, the amount of money it would cost in the stock value on the company, it just doesn't worth it. There was a deal there where some Samsung phones, they recalled them all, and because they were brand new. And what happened is, when they designed the phone, they wanted to get enough energy life out of the battery that they pretty much went to the edges and did not leave enough expansion space inside the phone for when the battery heated up. Now, that didn't show up in their testing and anything else. It was people out using it in the sunlight and things like that, that they completely had to redo that phone. And I just, you can imagine what that would be like. So that's why we don't have it. And the other thing is, when you pull the iPhone apart, Apple has these special tools to do it, different things like that. So just have Apple do it. And they have good prices. I think they're $89 or something like that. So, all righty, back on to Sonoma. And I hope this has been educational for everybody, because it's been some great questions and it really does go. First and foremost, make sure you have at least one time machine backup. And this I say all the time, not just because we're saying I'm agreeing you should go to Sonoma. So Sonoma has been very solid, and it's very, very good. So macOS Sonoma, these are the machines that are compatible with Sonoma, and it's actually pretty wide ranging. And I think part of the reason Sonoma has been so stable is they didn't do a lot of extraordinary things. But in the last few releases of the macOS, you're finding much more symmetry in the software between what we find on our iOS devices, our iPhone or iPad, and now our Mac. So the nice thing is, you're not really having to learn two different operating systems. You're kind of learning one operating system, and then they all mesh together. The other advantage to that is, if you're in the Apple Silicon or any of the M chips, you can run many of the iOS apps on your Mac. So going forward, this is their highlight. This is from the Apple site. And if I had to cut to this in the beginning, I would make the joke and tell you that we're going to go through all of these today. But that would be a bad joke right now, because we're only got a half hour left. So, but anyway, there's some really amazing things in here. And I may jump back to the screen, but if I go back to Keynote. So first and foremost, I'm not a big, what do your desktop and wallpaper pictures look like and things like that, because I usually have a lot of stuff open around it. But they have wonderful, wonderful screensavers, and they're in movement. So now the wallpaper is no longer static. You have the ability to, like in this case, and I had this saved as a movie, and for some reason it's not coming up as a movie. So anyway, it's like a drone shot, and it moves slightly, and then it comes back and it'll move again like that. So you're getting really dynamic, and they're just wonderful, and they're beautiful pictures. There's an Oregon Coast one that's great and stuff like that. So speaking of screensavers, many of you have screensavers on for when you walk away from the computer. There's things that show up. Yeah, I mean, for photos and things like that. But some people just have other stuff on there, that a clock that's going across the screen, everything else. Screensavers, like flying toasters was one of the originals, was done back in the day to keep from getting what's called screen burn-in. In other words, you would have a display on your computer, and you would have, think back to the old days when you had like DOS code up there, and the numbers would burn in, and the display would not be good. They would burn in, and then you'd see ghosting when you're going to other sites and things like that. So a screensaver would move, and it would make it be so that it wouldn't be stagnant and not create that screen burn in. That was the only real reason for them. There's some beautiful aesthetics of them, again, if you want your photo library to show or things like that. But there's no reason you need to do that. In fact, it wears your screen. Not bad. The screens last a long time these days, but it uses energy too. So I let my screen go to sleep. I don't need a screensaver on it. I don't care. I want it to just go off, and I let the screen go to sleep. If the computer's doing something in the background, it'll continue to do that. So desktops, on the other hand, are a little different. Some people have their desktop to change like every 30 seconds. Well, you're not usually looking at your desktop anyway, and it's changing your desktop all the time. And that actually uses clock cycles. So anyway, they are wonderful. The other new things is widgets. So we now have widgets in the iOS devices, which are little, oh gosh, what were they called years ago? Were they widgets? They were on the Mac, and you had these little apps that ran. Gosh, can't remember it. Anyway.
Were they called icons?
No. They were part of an Apple had them. There were third party ones. They were essentially like an app that runs but comes up on the screen. It doesn't matter. But now we have those, and it's great. And you can custom do these widgets. And like, for instance, they're on the iOS and everything. Here you've got a world clock you can always have up. You choose which weather you want here. And if you click on the widget, it brings you to more weather, reminders, things like that. So those things are omnipresent, and they're really nice to be able to go back and forth. And you know what? It was called Dashboard. And I forget what the components of the dashboard was. They may have been widgets. So widgets on the desktop is new in Sonoma. You've had it on iOS for a few iterations. So the nice thing is, if you have widgets on your iPhone or your iOS device, those can also come over to the widgets on your desktop. But if you notice this screen on the right here, the widgets are in the background, but you've got a photo up in the foreground. And so what it does is it deprecates the background so it doesn't take away from what you're really on. And you simply can hover over and then click on the widget if you want it to be what's bright. So it adapts, and it makes it pretty useful. Huge upgrade to Safari in Sonoma. And also it works in iOS 17. So in Safari, you can now create a profile. So what is a profile? So some of you may have separate users on your computer. If two people use the computer, you have separate users, and one side is completely sequestered from the other side, and you don't cross-pollinate anything. But if it's just you, and you want to create a profile, what a profile does is, and I'll give you an example. I've been searching and gathering information on Sri Lanka because I had booked a trip to Sri Lanka for a year and a half ago, but then they had this very severe economic crisis that created some turmoil and stuff like that. So I had to postpone that trip. Well, now I'm looking at planning to go back again because I have this wonderful gathering of elephants in early September. Over 300 elephants come and gather, and it's really, really neat. So, and a beautiful country. And I'd like to support them because they need the economic support. Ironically, years ago, I helped a friend. We did a huge fundraiser after the tsunami, and the charity that we directed it to was through the Rotary in Davis, and it went directly to the Rotary in Sri Lanka, in Colombo. So, and it'd be neat to meet up with a few of those people too. But anyway, I have created a profile in Safari that is Sri Lanka. So I have my regular profile I've had forever. I could do one for Japan. This came up after I got back from Japan. I could have one for skiing information. And the reason you, and first of all, don't just make profiles to make profiles, because then where is it syndrome happens. It's like, gosh, I've got all these folders. Where are they? Things like that. But what it really does is think of having Safari 1 and Safari 2. You have two versions of Safari, and you can run them side by side. But one side doesn't know the other side, and vice versa. So what that means is, if I'm doing research on Sri Lanka, I will go into my Sri Lanka profile, and I'll just do that I have to establish a profile first, and I'll just change to that profile. Now, if I do any Google searches, if I do anything else searching in there, the history of that search, and that's a big deal. You can go back and see what you did. If I create bookmarks in there, or reading list, or different things in Safari, it's in my Sri Lanka profile. So let's say I'm in Sri Lanka and I'm looking for, let's say hop on, hop off buses, which I always look for. So I'm looking for hop on, hop off buses around Colombo. And so I put that search in there, I've got that. Well, now, if I switch back to my regular profile, my original profile, and I'm getting ready to go to Buenos Aires, and I haven't made a profile for Buenos Aires. So in my regular profile, I go to search for hop on, hop off, and I say Buenos Aires. It will not start looking for hop on, hop off in Sri Lanka, because that's in a separate sequestered profile. And so therefore, the nice thing is you don't cross-pollinate all of these different things. You could have a recipe one. You could do different things like that. And again, I encourage you to work with it. I think it's great. It's going to be a huge tool. But I think that, like anything, just because you can doesn't mean you should. In other words, don't feel like you have to always make a profile for different things. If you want it, just, not make it so autofill starts to show up with other things. Use just one profile, but do other ones. And then when I complete my trip to Sri Lanka, I don't really need to research it anymore. So I could eliminate that profile if I want. But a profile doesn't really take up much room, because all it is a bunch of websites and website information. And that's a minimal amount of data. So I would keep it, because once friends hear that I've been to Sri Lanka, they might have questions about it, and then I can bring up that kind of stuff. So does that make sense on profiles and how you might use it? Any questions? All right. So the other thing is on the right here, and this is specific within the profile, but it's also new to Safari, no matter what you're doing. But the search is more responsive, and it will do autofill, and it will look across things much better. In this case, it's great. Like here was the earthquakes game score was the search they used. Well, rather than just give you a Google suggestion to go to the website, it lists it right here. So I think that's quite useful. And of course, it would look inside your computer. All right. Web apps. Now, web apps have been around for a while, so let me explain a web app. In the early days, before we had the App Store, there were things called web apps, and this was for the iPhone. And the iPhone didn't have apps, but developers could build a Safari website that acted just like an app. It was really like a quote bookmark in Safari, but you could save it to the home screen, and it would look not like a Safari logo. It would be the app that you chose, the name, and you could tap on it. So then everything went away to the App Store, and the App Store is great. And the App Store, of course, is useful on the Mac and the the iPhone and iPad. And I have a feeling they have never not supported web apps, but with the current antitrust situations that these overzealous regulators are trying to impose on Apple, and to give developers more freedom in what they can do, because Apple keeps the App Store very tight from a security and privacy basis. They don't want nefarious things happening there. And so I think they're opening up more and more and making it more accessible to use web apps. And that would be a way to keep this whole App Store antitrust thing at bay, because the web apps are free as far as I know. I mean, I know because it's basically a Safari link. So I think that's kind of where this is going. But as far as the web apps go, you basically would go to a web app and you can save it to your home screen or save it to your dock. And it looks just like in this case, instead of being the Pinterest app, it's using the Pinterest web app. So, all right, here we're back to passwords and passkey and enhanced private browsing. So password and passkey. Interestingly, in Sonoma and iOS 17, you can, if you have a set of passwords and you're in a household where you want to share that with someone else, because you're, hey, what's the password for this? Things back and forth. You can select to share your passwords with a trusted contact. And so very beneficial, but with power, just remember safety, because you've got to be careful with what you share. And I believe, and I'm not certain on this, but I believe if you both have Apple IDs and the password gets updated in one of if somebody updates the password on one end, it will update the others. Now, remember, if you're sharing your passwords, you can always revoke that privilege. So the other thing is there's in enhanced private browsing, you can password protect and tell it to even do less tracking than it does now. And Safari's been very, very robust about this. This is one of the most exciting things, I think, and it kind of just went under the radar. But for PDFs, preview, and notes, you can now put forms, if you download a PDF or you scan a document and put it in PDF, it will allow you to fill in your name, address, etc., from a form that doesn't look like it's a fillable form. It will analyze this form and say, okay, it says name, and it would leave you a spot to fill in. And that works both in preview and it works in notes. And part of this is based on the whole live text thing now, that when you take a picture of something, like if you took a picture of this Vera acupuncture, it would ask you if you want to highlight the text, and it would do that. And if you'll notice here, it says right here at the top is autofill form. So even though it'll let you fill out exactly what you want, it will also use your autofill capabilities to fill those in. And again, this is in preview or PDF and notes. And with notes, that is my 90% what I do to scan documents now. I go to notes, I hit the camera, and I hit scan, and it basically crops the note to the exact right size, and it allows the text to be readable and editable, not editable, excuse me, readable and copy and pastable. So very, 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 very good. And now in notes, like for instance, in Japan, I scanned when I got there, our wonderful guide had put together this 22-page itinerary with pictures and pointers and all this other stuff, which was so helpful. And I simply put it into notes in itself. And every time I needed to look at it, rather than pull it out of my my bag or my pocket, I had it right there and I could go through it each time I want. And very, very useful. And you can put full PDFs in there. So I just sat down in the hotel room and I took scanned quote pictures inside notes and added all 22 pages and they were one document. So very, very useful. Oh, was there something? Link related notes. So like in a trip itinerary, recommended restaurants. So if I'm like, I'll do that too. And like, I'll do a different note. So I'll say, okay, in Kyoto, these are the places I want to go. And I get their website and I put them in. Well, I can actually paste those links into notes now too. This is really interesting. Notes being more and more capable all the time is more and more the repository where I put things. And with notes, and this is a perfect example here, they have a photo and they have, this was an email message, it looks like in the background, and they're taking notes and moving it into pages because notes, by the way, is very limited in fonts and things like that. And that's by design because it makes the note itself very, 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 very small. And this way you could take that note, move it into pages, customize the fonts, customize the layout, do anything you want. And then you have made a complete document out of the things you put in notes. And that also means that, for instance, if you wanted this picture, it wouldn't have had to be the first thing in the notes. You can go through and move it around and manipulate it however you want. So let's see here. Oh, keyboard. All right, keyboard and autocorrect. First off, I want to give you a tip on how to defeat autocorrect. And I always give the example, and this will work on your Mac or your iOS device. So we know the word spiel, S-P-E-E-L, is not a word, but we know the word spell is. So there might be an occasion where you would need to type the word spiel. So if you type the word spiel and then hit the space bar on any of your device, it would autocorrect to spell. And then you get frustrated. And you go back and you try it out. You know, it's just the way to defeat that is if you type in the word spiel, S-P-E-E-L, and at that point, hit one more character, any character, number, a number, another L. I usually do the same letter twice. So I would put in S-P-E-E-L-L. And at that point, then I hit the left delete or the backspace key, and I remove that second L. And now when I hit the space bar, it will accept spiel. Doesn't save it to the dictionary, doesn't do anything like that. It just accepts that autocorrect so I don't have to go back and fix it. It's very, very useful. Speaking of that, we now have enhanced dictation where when you're on an iOS device, iOS 17 or on Sonoma, as you're dictating, it will try to think forward using artificial intelligence as to what your next word and parts of the sentence may be. And so if you look on the right here, you tap the space bar to finish words and then hit the O, and then it says, oh, it says entire sentences. Well, you could accept that or just keep typing, but if that's what you wanted, you would just hit the space bar and it finishes that. You can always go back. Now, the beauty of it is when we're doing dictation on the Mac and especially on iOS 17, as you're dictating and you hit the microphone, if you go to need to move your cursor around or you need to do a backspace or something like that, it does not shut off the microphone. It's still listening. So you don't want to say, oh crap, or something like that, because it'll do that. But anyway, just backspace through it, and you can continue to type or speak from there to have it do speech recognition. So the autocorrect has improved a lot. Yes, autocorrect is it's the bane of the existence sometimes. A few more things really quickly. If you have anybody that's suffering or in the throes of Parkinson's, accessibility is really neat, where you can create a personal voice. There's an app out there that does this. So for instance, Parkinson's can go towards the vocal cords and make it so you have really slurred sounding speech, and after a while you lose your speech altogether. But let's say if you're in a situation where a friend or family, you have a nickname for him. For instance, I have this one client, he calls her Peanut, and we have recorded his voice, whereas in the future, when and if when he loses his voice, he can press a keyboard thing and it'll say, "Hi, Peanut." And it just, little things like that are pretty amazing. FaceTime calls will now do live speech transcription, and that's really helpful if you've got some hearing impairments. Just a ton of accessibility features. Those are the hidden things Apple doesn't talk a lot about, but if you have any type of special needs, that's the way to go. Screen sharing, many of you have used Zoom screen sharing with me to troubleshoot and things like that. It's built into messages now too. So as long as you have iMessage on and it's a Mac to a Mac or a iPhone, any Apple device to any Apple device, you can look at the other screen. Actually, you know what? I'm not positive it works on iOS. I apologize for that. I think it's Mac to Mac only. I'll have to look. Visual lookup is really interesting. Basically, you take a picture of this bowl of quinoa and there's a recipe attached. It'll look up and find more information like ingredients and things like that. The Photos app, the detection of people and animals is much, much better. So for the name detection, but also it recognizes cats and dogs. Reminders. A big thing in reminders in iOS 17 and Sonoma is that if you're making your grocery list, for instance, in reminders, and you put in oranges, then you put in carrots. Well, they're both orange, but they're probably not the same category. And you put in celery, and you put in lemons, and you put in ground beef. It will determine that and group your shopping list accordingly by category. And it's doing that and detecting it itself. Obviously, you can adjust it, but it's a great way to do it because generally speaking, if you're going to the grocery store, things for the most part are arranged by categories like that. So two more things here, I believe, three. Mail program now has the ability to kind of search your results. And if you have travel related emails, those can go up to the top of your list so you can see them. And it's really, really amazing. So another feature with a lot more people are using AirTags. I encourage their use. They're wonderful. The batteries do last for a year, and they're a simple watch key fob battery that's maybe $1 each or something like that. And the problem has been, let's say you're traveling with someone and you're sharing a suitcase, for instance. Well, only one person would be able to follow it because the AirTag is tied to an Apple ID. You can share that AirTag with someone else also, additionally, so they could track it or do whatever. But the other nice thing about that is if you're traveling with someone and you both have AirTags, when you're together, there's an anti-stalking feature built in that would say, it'll say, an AirTag that is not yours is following you. And that's just a reminder. I rented a pickup truck for a few hours to move a hide-a-bed. And I pull out of the U-Haul and it pops up on my phone after about half mile. It says, an AirTag that is not yours, and this was early on in the AirTags, that's not yours is following you. And I went, and I wasn't offended by it at all. I cracked up and I go, that's so smart. This guy that owns this U-Haul truck has put that in there, and I thought it was just fantastic. So the sharing activity, it also means so you can also, you're traveling with someone else, and by sharing the tag, you won't have that follow page feature, but it won't have that pop up all the time. But secondly, either of the people can track that particular AirTag. And of course, and you can set a time limit on it, or you can just undo sharing. The home thing isn't much of a deal. AirPods, much easier to transfer between devices with the Bluetooth. If you have Apple Music, if you're paying for Apple Music and you're with someone, you can share your playlist with them. It doesn't mean they will permanently have that music, but while you're together and stuff, you're able to share it and you can both listen to it, and it actually syncs. So you're going to be listening to it at the same time. You do have the ability to share to someone else's AirPods also. Dictation, I talked about. Dictation and keyboard work fluidly together. And so you don't have to stop dictating. You just sit there and do the corrections. And now the last one is, instead of having to say the word hey and the word Siri to activate our little friend, you can just say the word Siri. And the problem with that is Siri off. But I think that it gets activated enough that I've kept it at just the word hey and the word Siri. I don't need this extra activation, and I usually use the button anyway. So, all right, I'm going to show you really quick profiles here. So if I go to Safari, so here I am, I'm in my regular profile, and I'm going to open up a new window. And right up here at the top, I have one for Sri Lanka. And I can say switch to my Sri Lanka window. So I have a few videos saved here that are Sri Lankan ones. And you'll notice the wallpaper pattern is different. So I can immediately, and this color coding, I can immediately tell which one is which. And whatever I do in the Sri Lanka one, all of that stays within the realm of that Sri Lanka. So, all right. Any questions? I didn't think I'd make it, but we made it. I'm feeling pretty good. And I'm very happy to answer any questions. We had a great question and answer session. So if not, comment, go ahead. Oh, somebody.
Yeah, I don't remember how to raise your hand on this.
Well, that's fine. You've accomplished it. Go ahead and ask your question.
Well, there used to be a button you could push and then the hand would raise on the picture, and I can't find it anywhere.
Yeah, it is under
reactions.
Yeah, but I don't see reactions.
At the very bottom in the black bar.
Okay, I got it now.
Oh yeah, reactions in the black bar.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Rich, go ahead.
Rich is first.
Yeah, Rich, go ahead.
In notes, when you copy a document, can you circle after you have recorded that? Can you circle a particular um, uh, sentence within that document?
So when you say recorded it, you mean if you've
When I
entered
take
a note.
when I take a scan of a page of a book,
Okay, gotcha.
can I circle a sentence?
You can, and what you do is well, it's weird. I think you have to use markup, and you have to treat it like a photo rather than a scan. Because the photo allows you to put stuff over it.
So can you move a note document into photos?
No, so when I say you scan, so you're doing it, you're so you're taking, when you go to scan the document, you use the camera on your phone. When you go to scan, you have the option of making it a photo or making it a PDF. And the PDF makes it text editable and everything else. And the photo would just make it a picture of the document. And in that case, then you could do it. But I think there might be a way to do it other than that. I mean, you can always bring it into Pages and do it. Let's see here. So this is scanned, and let me look here. Oh, you can add sketch, but I'm not sure if and this is only on the Pro Max. Yeah. So this is only on the iOS devices. So, I would Google that and Google it just like you did, because I'm not sure, and they're constantly changing it. So,
Okay.
more than likely, it would be from the iOS device because you have a touch screen.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Ken.
Sure. And CarCat, go right ahead.
You're muted.
You're still muted, CarCat.
There we go. I have to turn in an old iPhone, and I was wondering, is there more than one way to erase the contents, or just hook it up to my laptop and go through the motions?
No, don't do it from the laptop. It's an iPhone.
Yeah.
So, and your current app, and it has
iPhone
your
11s.
Sure. So you have your current, and it's on your current Apple ID, correct?
Probably still, yeah.
And you know that password, correct?
I hope so.
Well, yeah, definitely. And are you trading it into Apple?
No, trading it into AT&T.
Okay. So what I do first usually is go into the phone and go to Settings, iCloud, and sign out of my iCloud.
Uh-huh.
Didn't they send you a sheet on how to do it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I check with that. But the other thing is, if you want to skip that step, you go into your phone, go to Settings, General, and then scroll to the very bottom, and it says Transfer or Reset iPhone.
Well, they've already transferred the contents onto my
No,
new.
you need to do this. Well, no, you did through your Apple, but you say Transfer or Reset iPhone. And then at the very bottom, it will say erase all contents and settings.
Oh, okay.
And what that'll do is, and then because you're locked to your Apple ID, it will prompt you, should prompt you to uh, enter your Apple ID password, because that way it's not somebody that stole your phone and wants to get it squared away. Then it will ask you for that, and then it will continue through the process, and it will be very securely erased, and it would be back to factory settings.
Okay.
And you've
It'll
ascertained that
also
you
now
have.
remind you to sign out of the Find Me.
Well, that's the thing. That's part of the sign out. It'll do
Yeah,
that.
but I mean, it's what it reminds you if you haven't done it.
And
Okay.
and how long ago did you transfer to the new phone?
It's been maybe a week or two.
And you're sure everything's over there?
Yeah, I've been using the new phone, and
Your
other than
photos
it
are all
kind
there,
of,
and your photos and everything else are there?
yeah, but
Great.
I
Yeah, that
guess,
should do it. And if worse comes to worse, you could make an appointment at the Apple Store, the Genius Bar, or even your AT&T store would help you with that. But this shouldn't be a problem. The only hiccup is sometimes it won't let you sign out of the Apple ID, so you may have to backtrack, go into your iCloud and sign out of your iCloud, and it'll sign you out of Find My and all that other stuff, and then there shouldn't be a hindrance.
okay.
Good luck. And
Thank
our
you.
last questions of the day, questions the day is Randy.
Just one question. Thanks, Ken. Great session. On photography, you mentioned you could take a photo of a dish or a food item and it would identify, but how do you identify plants and animals using photography?
Great question. You asked this before, and I'm glad you did. So let me look if
For plants, there's several specialized apps. Some of them are free.
but you don't need any app anymore. You
Well,
can use Google search, but
yeah.
let's see. Let's go here. Let's say plants. Well, let's say flowers. There we go. This might be work. All right. So this is a sunflower. This is in West Sacramento, or Woodland, I should say. Now, if I hit this information badge or hit get info, and I'm just looking to see if it works, but it may not. So it works on the phone though. Huh.
Well, sometimes it'll tell you that it can't
Well, I think it's because this
eligible
is
yet
older and it hasn't been processed. So
Yeah.
what I'm going to do is everybody go into your photos.
on your
And
phones.
I'll walk you through it. Go into photos on your phone. And then do the search for flowers. And so I've got one here. So once you're in and you see the flower, you hit the blue circle with the eye in it. And actually, let me,
If you're lucky, it says look up plant.
yeah, mine says look up chrysanthemum. And if not, if it just says look up, if you tap it, it will go find you pictures that are similar. So I'm going to take a screenshot of this. And I'm going to airdrop it to my Mac.
Thanks, Ken. I got it to work.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to Come on, there we go. So this is how it looks on my phone. I found the photo, and then I hit the little eye at the bottom. You guys can still see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you hit the eye at the bottom and this window comes up. And it's also very useful. There's a map down there for where your location was and everything else. But in this case, it said, look up, and it knew it was a chrysanthemum. So let me look when I tap that. And then it brings up a Wikipedia, Florist Daisy, all kinds of other stuff and other examples. So it's really very, very interesting. And yeah, all this is done within the phone and the smart AI that looks for other things. I mean, it'll do it for landmarks, for instance. Let me see if I can get, Tokyo Tower would be one. So let's see. So in this case, I picked up a tower, not Tokyo Tower, but another one that says landmark, and it's Tokyo Skytree is what it is, and it has other photos of it. So rather than naming the landmark, so very, very capable, very fun to do with. This is super useful if you're out there and you're, oh gosh, what kind of flower is that? And again, landmarks, you can do the same thing. All right, everybody. Thank you for hanging out. And board members, I guess we'll see you at 1, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. I've got to refill my water. I got to make it to the kitchen and back. So, okay, I'm going to stop the recording.
Safari to the kitchen.
What's that?
Safari to the kitchen.
Yeah, it's a journey.
See you in a while.
Thank you.
Thank you.